and welcome to the next Intershop deep dive webinar. Today I'd like to show you a simple Alexa skill, an example that we use in our training classes. I hope you enjoy. I just mentioned it is a training use case, so that means for you, if you want to start an Alexa skill, you can take this one as a given example and immediately start creating your own skills with the knowledge from this webinar. My name is Michael Hartwig. I joined Intershop in 2011. I'm employed as a senior technical trainer and as well a research engineer. And before we start, let's look at our agenda. I don't have a real agenda. I rather have some lemmata, so some things I'd like to convince you about. The first lemma, using Alexa is fun. I definitely stand in for that. And the second lemma, creating your old skill is not only fun, but also easy. Simple. Yes, it is. Then I would like to modify the common approach to developing Alexa skills and present you a case where we use the ICM, the Intershop Commerce Management Tool, as the endpoint. And I'd like to argue that the ICM is the better and the right endpoint. Finally, hopefully I can convince you that we should be doing a lot more here. And we should be using Alexa and conversational commerce much more often. Some housekeeping rules before we start. At the beginning, you will be muted. Questions you can enter using the chat at any time. We'll answer the questions at the end of the webinar. And yes, the webinar is currently being recorded, so later it will be available to you for download. So let me start with the first thing I'd like to convince you about. Using Alexa is fun. Here you see me one more time, this time in my role as a father. Yes, I am a father and, well, enjoying having a big family. I still want to concentrate on projects, on fun, and not repetitive household stuff. So I don't know how is it with you and your family, but when preparing for dinner or lunch, calling everybody and making everybody to join and help is not an easy thing. Typical, there is an argument going around. I did this already yesterday, Daddy, and similar things. So while my kids are doing what the father is telling them to do, still I thought about outsourcing that. Why not have Alexa doing that for me? So I created a simple Alexa skill. You see the code for the Alexa skill. First, I have a list of children. These are my children. And then I have a few things that are the tasks that need to be done before we can all sit together and eat. There's somebody who needs to set the table, somebody who needs to fill the dishwasher with all the old stuff. We need somebody bringing the food from the fridge. And yeah, one of my children always gets the free ticket and he or she can just come to the table. So then I created a small method just randomly switching the tasks and creating an assignment list. And then I create a speechlet where I add the sentence, dinner has to be prepared. And I go through the assignments and children array and create a sentence like, Nai, fill the dishwasher, Chuck, set the table, Nakoma, just come to table and Justine get food from the fridge. Trust me, it was fun doing that. And if I have to say, it's not only fun, it is a lifesaver. Now my children cannot argue with me anymore. When they say, Daddy, I did this already yesterday, trust me, what can I say? Alexa was doing that assignment, not me. One more argument. Here you see me in my second role, my role for Intershop. And this is the thing, these are the things that we teach in course 550. So you might argue, why am I teaching Alexa? It's not directly related to Intershop. Yeah, I started putting some fun, some project-related things into the end of the week after a lot of Intershop syntax, Intershop technology. And I had a lot of things there. We connected to Facebook, we connected to a column store database, and we also created an Alexa web skill. And the interesting thing is, if you see this last sentence on the line, when just popping up the slides from a previous hackathon that we had, where people created an Alexa web skill, I was immediately in trouble because people wanted to see more. It was not the Facebook example, it was not the column store example, it was the Alexa example. Everybody wanted to know about this. So, but let me go back to the training. I strongly recommend that, especially that course, you check out. That is a full immersion course that brings you quickly up to date with Intershop technology. We have really focused on a shift to look at what you can do after the course with Intershop. We want you to do with Intershop more. Years back, we will not be able to do such a course. But Intershop has changed. Look at the Angular storefront, look at Gradle deployment, microservices, our nearly open source project structure. So we can focus a lot on features, and we are doing that in training. So hopefully that has convinced you that it is fun. At least it was fun for me. Surprisingly, it was also not so difficult. Creating your own Alexa skill is simple. I'd like to convince you just by showing 4 or 5 slides that I have prepared. Whenever you want to start writing your own Alexa skill, make sure you have 3 accounts ready. There's the Amazon Alexa account, the Amazon developer account, and the AWS. For the beginning, that makes life easy. Let me switch to those accounts. I have them already open. That is the Amazon Alexa account. I'm already logged on, as you can see here. Then I have the Amazon developer account. I still need to log on. Let me log on. That shall just take a second. And I need an AWS developer console logged on. Here you need a credit card in order to start, but you will not be charged if you just consume what you need, and the free ride is fully enough. Have those accounts being ready before you even start developing. I strongly recommend it. It helps. So now looking at the Alexa infrastructure. Creating a web skill is best understood if you look at the data being passed around. On the left side, you see the devices. You can have an Echo Dot, you can have a web simulator, or you can have the app as I have it now, and I've turned it off because it wanted already to talk to me. The device takes your voice, records it, and sends it to the Alexa cloud, where it is understood and translated into a JSON string. The JSON string is then sent to what we call an endpoint, and at the beginning, you often go for the AWS endpoint. If for computing the response, you need then some data, you can talk and make a REST call to any other web server. For instance, the ICM. This is the basic second. Simple in my mind. Now let's look at the accounts that we have already open. The Amazon Alexa account is where you control what skill shall be allowed to be used and spoken to on what device. In the Amazon developer account, you create your skills. And on the AWS, you create the endpoint computing the response. Now some technical terms. The device you are speaking to is usually called an Alexa device in all those infrastructure elements. When it comes to an Alexa skill, we have a number of technical terms. The skill is, so to say, a set of features, and every skill always has a name and an invocator word. The invocator word is later the word that triggers the skill. Now, one more time, a skill is a set of features with at least a name and an invocator word. As the skill is a set of features, every single feature in that skill is called intent. An intent is then later being triggered not by an invocator word, but rather by an utterance. An utterance is a spoken sentence. In that utterance, you can have a lot of slots. You will see that in the code later. The slots are very important for us because this is where we can later get the information from the client. The utterance is fixed, but the slots is where it is filled with the spoken information from the client. A skill is often as good as the definition of utterances. The more utterances you have, the better often the skill. These are the forms we speak in order to open or trigger an intent. So once Alexa has understood our utterance, knows which intent we want to trigger, it puts all that information into a JSON string and triggers an endpoint. At the beginning and easiest, it's a lambda function. That is just one function written in JavaScript and easily computed. In that lambda function, yes, then you can make your REST calls, for instance, to the ICM. So back to our infrastructure. I was now the trainer having a use case in that course 550 prepared. That is the use case. The use case is about warehouses. With more clients switching to our CaaS offering, having an IOM installation deployed, we might think about a new training use case, but for now we are still using it for programming and showing you all kinds of possible extensions that you can do to an ICM. We show it for you for database, table creation, persistent objects, business objects, and including the higher layer, we put the information into the storefront, into the back office, and also create some REST services. All this for a warehouse use case. So let's look at the typical things. One snap is here from the back office. So you see under the products, there's a Sony FDR set product, and currently it's available in Germany and in Mexico. In Germany, it is 109 times, and in Mexico, it is 537 times. That's what we do in the training. Left side, left pictures, that's the JSON string that we pass to the vault for the storefront, or anybody who wants to get the same information. I did not want to change anything here. I wanted to accept it as it is, and just in the last session use it for an Alexa skill. So what do we have to do? Let's look at the tasks that we need to do. I was thinking about a warehouse skill. The warehouse will be triggered using the invocator word warehouse. In that warehouse skill, I intend to do an intent called storage intent, and I'd like to be triggered that intent with two sentences. Either give storage for product A, B, C, or provide storage. I'm well aware that this is not enough. In a production environment, I would have to define at least a number of utterances more. We might then say, give me please the storage, or say storage, or is the product ABC available, how many times. If you see the Alexa skills out there, they always have a number of utterances. Very important is the product name that you can already guess from the slide is a slot. So, second step, we have to write the endpoint. In the first example, I will do it using an AWS account on the AWS with some JavaScript. So what do I need to do? The endpoint is being triggered. So the Lambda function. So first I need to check for the storage intent, that I really on the right intent. Then secondly, I make a REST call to the ICM for getting the information about the Sony product, for instance. Then let me go back to the JSON string. Here it is on the left side. So I need to loop through that because it's an elements array. And what do I need from that elements array? Two things. I need from the attributes array, first element, the value, 109. And secondly, from the UI, the last part of the URL, that's the Germany. Then I have the two important figures that I need, the value 109 and Germany. So that I do a little bit with a loop. And finally, I have to do some tweaking in the code to making it nice, putting commas, putting the end, saying hello, and so on. Being done all this, hoping that step 3 is still fully running, we will check that. I go back to the Amazon Developer Console and test my skill. And at the last step, I add my skill to the Alexa device. So let's do it live. So let me start from the beginning. Step number 1, open the developer console. There you find Alexa Skills Kit. And in the Alexa Skills Kit, you are able to create your skills. So in your case, press Create Skill to start, and you should see it in the same window that I have already for my skill. I have a warehouse skill being defined. So defining that skill, you can use the wizard on the left. I can tell you most people just go for the JSON editor because the JSON string is, in my mind, readable. Let's read the JSON string. I start from the top. The invocation word or invocation name for the skill is warehouse. You get a number of automatically added intents. That is a cancel intent, a help intent, stop intent. I could delete them because I will not do with anything on the endpoint. And then I have the storage intent. That is the one I have defined. The storage intent inside has a slot. You saw it already on the slide. P name, which is of type my product. That is the easiest for me in training, and I allow in that with the values Sony, Kodak, and Canon. If you want to do a more realistic case, I would go for a string and then later try to map that string live on the ICM. You should check out the available types out of the box by Amazon. There are a number of good types, Amazon author, Amazon date, that help you to map and understand nicely what the customer is saying. So my utterances: give storage for product, and then the product, the Sony, the Kodak, the Canon, or provide storage for product. When you start doing that, please don't forget, after making changes, to save the model and then also to build the model. I was away from this for at least 4 weeks, and when coming back yesterday to this, I also forgot that after making changes, you always have to press build model, and then you might not see what you intend to see. Okay, coming back to the slides. So we have done step number 1, and the warehouse skill is defined. Let's go to the AWS. Type in lambda. So here you can also create a new function. I have already done that. Let me open the warehouse skill function. Here comes the first thing that for beginners might be a little bit tricky. What's important is to add the Alexa skills kit trigger to that function. You can just drag and drop it from the left side. However, when you first open the AWS account, often you don't see that trigger. You can browse the web. You have to change the location. Not all locations on AWS allow the Alexa Skills Kit trigger. Okay, that's it. The rest is done automatically. Then you create a JavaScript function and say which function shall be called, here in my case, the index handler function. So it is a deep dive seminar. So you subscribe to it. So let's deep dive a little bit into the code. What am I doing here? I'm getting the request. If the request is a launch request, then I just say, welcome to your warehouse skill, and so on. Okay. Or the request is an intent request, and I'm interested in the storage intent request. So then I'm most importantly get the product name from the slots inside the intent. So this is just an initialization value. So this is the training use case. If the product is Kodak, I just say the product ID to be that one. In a production scenario, I might check the product live from the ICM. Then I call the ICM and add some end speech tag. So calling the ICM, that is my REST call. I pause the body, and now I do a slight trick You know what I did? I just copied the REST call right here into the body so that we can even work without having a running Intershop. Yeah? But I will remove the and make this a comment and do a real call on the ICM in just a few minutes. I have copied the response from Intershop here into the body. So what do we have to do? We say the product is available, then we pass the body. You remember? The REST call was an elements array. So for each in those elements, if it's not the first one, then I add an end word to the speech. Otherwise, from the attributes, I take the first element and then the value. This is my count. And finally, getting the last after the split. Remember, that was the country. So that's a little bit of tweaking because I didn't want to change the JSON call. I wanted to take it as it is in class. So still it is a mock-up. I agree. We will later do a real one. But let's first test whether the end up and the warehouse skill work together. So where are we? Step number 2 is done. So I skip step number 3 and just test. Let's go back to the skill. Let's go to test. And let me test whether the endpoint works. Open warehouse.
Welcome to your warehouse skill. I can check the storage for products.
Good. Here you also see that is beautiful in the test editor or simulator. You see the JSON strings, the input and the one I have to create. So let me ask warehouse to provide storage for product Sony. The second intent.
Let me check for the product Sony. The product is available 576 times in Brazil and 132 times in Germany and 964 times in India and 760 times in Mexico.
Wow, already works. I know, still a mock-up. So let's ensure that the ICM is running and don't use a prepared JSON response, use the real response. Let me check first that the ICM is running. This is the training VM. So I'm already logged on. Let me look for a product. Already there. So that's the Sony FDR set. And the inventory, is defined. So, but of course, from Alexa, we will use the JSON response. So I hope it is somewhere still here, storage, stocks, and make a get. Yep. You see the ID M4548 still being the same, and the response is 109 and 537. So that JSON call I'd like now to include into my Alexa skill to make it live. Let's go back to our Lambda function. And let's take off the faking and save it. Please give it a few seconds before the function is being deployed. So I think Alexa has done enough. So now the numbers should change. Germany was 109. So let's see, ask warehouse to provide storage for product Sony.
Let me check for the product Sony. The product is available 109 times in Germany and 537 times in Mexico.
Was that hard? Not at all. I know, guys, that you still might think that I'm making things up. So let me log here. And let's change the inventory, because yesterday we had a huge sale in Germany and we have only 24 items now left. Let's go back. Ask warehouse, oops, to give, let me use the second utterance, storage for product Sony.
Let me check for the product Sony. The product is available 24 times in Germany and 537 times in Mexico.
Convinced? It was easy. Okay. Very last step. Now we need to add this skill to a device. So let me show you back. Step number 1 is done. The warehouse skill is defined. Step number 2 is done. We have the JavaScript being produced. We have the call to the ICM for data. We have tested in the simulator. So last one. I have no echo here, but I have an app. So it's a little bit hard when you start doing that to find your skill, at least me. I was looking around for a while because your skill is not yet being published. Go to the Your Skills section and then go to Dev Skills. There is where your skills appear automatically and then allow. So you see, I have already allowed. So let me turn it on again here. Let me go to my Alexa. Ask warehouse to provide storage for product Sony. Oh, sorry.
Product is available 24 times in Germany and 537 times in Mexico.
Perfect. So let me mute it immediately. Otherwise, it will constantly try to understand what I'm saying. Sorry, guys. That's it. Creating your first Alexa skill is a simple thing. A JSON string with an invocator word, some utterances, define correct slots, and then a little bit of JavaScript programming. After having done that, I was looking at the infrastructure again. And I was thinking, the ICM is a full-fledged server. Why not produce the JSON that Alexa requires on our ICM directly, omitting AWS? Why not? No? There is a number of things that we have as advantages here. We are closer to the data. We can work in our system that we know in Java, although you can on AWS also write code in Java. But you have your cartridges there. And if you need in one response a number of the requests to do, you have it all in one. So Alexa and the ICM is only doing one call. Why not do it like this? And I was surprised. I have to say, I was surprised a little bit when doing that. It was far easier than the way before, in my mind. So, because there is good help. Step number 1 that we have to do, we have to map the JSONs to Java objects inside our cartridges. And there is good help. Look at the JSON schema to Bojo website. This already produces nearly the classes as we need them. Of course, it's called JSON schema to Pojo and not JSON schema to Intershop RO. So a little bit of tweaking we have to do, but not much. Then we have to write again the endpoint. But other things that we do in training all the time, we write a REST resource. And then I can test it easily in a REST client. Last step, now we have a new endpoint. Let's change the endpoint to being the ICM. So let's do that. That's a little bit more, but let's start. Number one, let me get back one more time to the simulator. So what you see on the left side is the JSON input into the endpoint that Alexa produces. This one we have to map into Java classes. And the right side we have to produce. I told you there's good help. I show you how. Just copy the whole JSON input format. Go to JSON Pojo. Copy the whole thing. Say you want to produce Java code. You want to produce JSON. The input is JSON. And maybe your package structure is Intershop training Alexa. And the highest class, I think in my case, it was storage RO. That's it. Download. And let's check. Yep, we got them. The highest class being called storage RO, and the others for you to map the JSON string into a complex Java object. So I did that with a little bit of tweaking, and I show you what I changed. I created a cartridge, and the classes that I need, I have copied. So the storage RO is my highest. I can tell you now the changes that I did. Come on. Now it comes. No, not the slots. I wanted to start with the storage. Actually, I removed a little bit some information about the O-ring here in front. Secondly, I always extended the Intershop abstract resource object class and implemented the Intershop interface resource object. You can check the cookbook, all the examples do that. And finally, I added a public non-parameterized constructor. That's all that I did. And then my mapping from JSON to Java is ready. So step number 2, we are still write the resource class, test in REST client, and then change the endpoint. So let's write a resource class. So let's look at that. The incoming request is a post. I consume JSON and I produce JSON. And the object I map to is my storage RO. The rest is similar to what you have seen on AWS before. You check whether you get a launch request or you get an intent request and you have a storage intent. Then you get from the slots the P name and you get the product SKU. This is the typical Intershop coding to get the data about the warehouses. Here in that case, it's a collection of warehouses we get from the warehouse be a repository. So, and then you produce the out text. That's all. No? So let's test. So that one is assigned as storage. Storage. I'm not yet done here. So that's a post, and we get in JSON. So let me copy live the, oops, no, here we are, that's the tester, the incoming JSON, copy. So now the mapping happens, and I should see a response. There we go. So I produce the right side that is here right in the ICM. Last step, change the endpoint. Let's go back. That was the wrong click. Here we are. Let's change the endpoint. So I have the endpoint, I think, here right on my desk. Nope, then it's here. So that I don't have to type that. So we change from AWS to an HTTPS, and that's the default. And I say I have a subdomain, perfect, and save. Again, after saving the endpoint, please, although the button is not to be seen here, build the model. It takes a second or two. Yep, there's a build successful, so we can test.
Let me check for the product Sony FDRX 1000 VSET. The product is available 24 times in Germany and 537 times in Mexico.
Perfect. Right from the ICM. So one last slide, and then we are, I'm sorry, already in the summary. Why am I arguing that this is the better way? I'm sure you have heard about localization framework that we offer. Localization framework allows you to define keys in properties files. Here I have a greeting morning key, and I want this one to be stand for good morning. Whenever an English-speaking person is seeing something related to the key, and Guten Morgen if a German person is seeing the website. In ISML, it is famous. Everybody knows that you can use the IS text tag for it, but you can also use it in Java. And this makes it quite powerful because look at the last slide, you can adjust it in the back office on the fly. Let me show you that. Okay, the keys are defined in my cartridge. And I have one key being there, defined in English, that is called Alexa Storage Intent Ending. Currently just a dot. So let me go back to my response. After the text about the warehouses is being produced, I add this key. So at the moment, I just add a dot. I can confirm that. If you look back at the REST request, look, there is a second dot here at the end. That is, of course, ignored. But we can change that on the fly. So I can even go to back office and localization management, look for my keys, go for an Alexa key, press find. And yes, at the moment, the default from the cartridge is a text, but let me say, hurry summer sale ends on Friday, and apply. And immediately this text is being spoken to the Alexa devices. Trust me, ask warehouse to provide storage for product Sony.
Let me check for the product Sony FDRX 1000 VSET. The product is available 24 times in Germany and 537 times in Mexico. Hurry, summer sale ends on Friday.
So, isn't that cool? I like it. This makes the whole thing so flexible. You could define a number of keys for the beginning, for a middle promotion in the code, and then flexibly adjust them in the endpoint. Trust me, Intershop offers you the bits and bytes to make your skills beautiful. So let's go back to the slides. Please see again the tech block for some advices. I have some advices regarding the code. You should keep the response thin. You should always have an additional mapping attribute in the code. Check it out. I think there are good devices to produce good JSON structures. You can use advanced features. So far we have just used a one-time intent, but you can have a real conversation. In the JSON string, you always see what has been said before. You can use authorization because an Alexa skill is, the device is always connected to an email account and so on. Check it out. Last lemma, we should definitely be doing more here. All together, I say. If you don't trust me, then let's talk to two people. There's an interesting post done by Dr. Döhler, our Director of Research, where we are going with conversational commerce. And I also have spoken to Patricia Miller, our B2C customer, and she clearly said to me, I don't want to shop anymore. I want the experience. And yes, when thinking about this deeper, there is so many things that we can offer as services using Alexa skill. A simple scenario you might see here. Somebody orders something and receives the email, your order number 546 has been received, and updating your delivery information, the password is catch. So then she says, ask Intronics or whatever shop she ordered to say, when will my order number 545 be delivered? Alexa asks, what's your password? She will say cat, and then Alexa thinks, talking again to Intronics, and says, your order has been dispatched from the Jena warehouse and shall be delivered to you tomorrow between 4 and 6. So I hope I could convince you that using Alexa is fun. At least this is usually what I see in training. People get intrigued by this topic. It is not only fun, it is also easy. Lastly, I strongly vote for using the ICM. It's also a cost factor. I mean, the free AWS account is just for us for playing, but on company side, I might think about using the ICM directly. And it is flexible with the localization framework. And yes, we should be definitely doing more. One more time here, these are the tech block entries that you can see. And if you want to do something with ICM directly, these are the 3 frameworks that you need to know: the REST framework, component framework, and localization framework. All those frameworks are being discussed in our training programs. So have a look at the right corner. There is somebody I'd like you to talk to. I want him, that is Mr. Thomas Richter, being busy, because then I know that you create and use all the features that we have put into the ICM and create engaging web shops that are really doing a service to our customers. Thank you. I'm open for Q&A. So, yeah. How do you make ICM accessible from AWS? It's just the two options. Yeah? Use a normal REST call and use our REST framework. Project. Yeah? Call me on this again if you want to see. I can share the code with you. I'm open to give you the cartridge, because in that cartridge you have everything. The assignment of the REST service in the component framework. I'm okay with giving this away. But I strongly vote for joining the training sessions, because this is where we show you how to do that. You know? Second one. Okay, yeah, the other one I think was the same. Yeah, are we able to get the code? Yes, I'm sharing that example, but it is a training example, so it makes full sense only if you join the training, because we refer to the warehouse example that we use in training, but it might show you and help you to start with your own Alexa skills. And we want you to start. We want you to do that service to your customers. There is another one here talking about whether I'm not concerned about privacy. Yes, I am. Personally, I would hesitate to implement a full-fledged shopping skill. Although the account is definitely being connected to an email, so you can clearly identify the person, but who else might be sitting in the room and speaking then? So, but there is so many services that have nothing to do with privacy and personal data, wish listing, product recommendation, having somebody driving a car and just saying, hey, Alexa, let me store the following product, and so that tomorrow I'm reminded about checking this price out. This is so many services. I would strongly go for that. Lisa is asking in that direction. Yes, definitely. The REST-based storefront being presented last week, and already by now we have all the REST calls being ready in the ICM, so that you can do a full-fledged shopping. I would hesitate a little bit, but yes, technically it can be done, for sure. Okay, so if I'm looking at the time, I think it is time for adjourning the session. Thank you very much for being here. Please download the recording. You can have the slides, you can have the example. And one more time, I remind you, we are here in training for teaching you all the features and using those features. So come and join training so that you go home and can immediately apply the knowledge. Thank you.